Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take our attention and we're going to focus it on the Starfarer Gemini. This is a refueling ship. It's quite colossal. It's made by Misc and also Aegis Dynamics, who have thrown their military know-how onto this vessel. As you can see, it's got quite a substantial amount of firepower. It's not really a combat ship. They've decided to remove the fuel scoop at the front that you'll find on the standard Starfarer and throw some missiles in there, which makes it look a little bit more teethy, a bit more aggressive. I really like the outside of this ship. I think the level of detail is actually really good, considering that this is quite an old ship in the game. So it holds up pretty well. Internally, there are some struggles going on, but we'll talk about those as we progress through the video. Now, as it stands at the moment in-game, there's not really a huge demand for these at the moment. No one is running out of fuel. There are plenty of places to land to get fuel. In the future, however, as systems get bigger, as travelling becomes more and more of an issue where planning will become a thing to get to where you want to go, refueling ships and the Starfarers will almost certainly have an important role to play. Until we get to that point though, at the moment there's not really a lot we can do with these. We can do cargo running. We could, if you're feeling brave, do bounty hunting in them. But again, I wouldn't recommend it because they're not really combat ships. The Gemini is not really a combat ship. That doesn't mean that you couldn't. Maybe you could do some blockade running. It's got some excellent shields, some excellent firepower. You will need to multi-crew this to get the maximum potential out of it. So there's a lot going for it in terms of what it could possibly do, just not in the right situation at the moment with this ship. Now, on the outside, I'm a huge fan of how this ship looks. It looks menacing, it looks military, and I had a thought about this. Now, we all know the Hercules is an awesome ship, okay? It is, but I kind of feel like the Gemini would make more of a military transport ship in the way that it looks than it does the M2 Hercules. Just my opinion, just throwing it out there. I just feel like this ship, the way it looks, would support that military transport ship more than the M2. So if you're listening, CIG, let's have a military transport variant of this ship, because I think this would suit the bill. But externally, the Gemini looks superb. The detail to be found in and around the fuel tanks at the back, all the nuts, bolts, nooks and crannies, along with all the lights. This ship really does look awesome on the inside. It's the interior where things take a bit of a nosedive. There's some annoying things in this ship, but on the outside, I absolutely adore the look of this thing. I think it looks the part. It really is awe-inspiring, especially at the back. Now that we've got the refueling probe and the various fuel tanks we can operate, it really does add to some immersion. It's a great looking ship, in my humble opinion. So how are we going to use these in the future? That's the question. If I was to own one of these and I had a crew, where would I park this? Where would I put the beacons up? It's a tricky question to answer, because I guess there's a lot of variables. For example, how far could a little ship go before it needs to refuel? Let's say a Gladius. Do I park in sort of that fuel range to fill up light fighters and small explorers? Or do I go really far out and try and refuel larger ships like 890 jumps, Carracks, things of that nature? So that could be quite interesting on the strategy how to deploy this. Or do I simply fly to where they need fuel? Do I wait for people to run out of fuel and then take the Starfarers in that direction to them? Which could be risky, could be an ambush. I mean, you're bringing a Starfarer that's full of quantanium and hydrogen fuel to an unknown and undisclosed location. So there's a lot of ways to use this ship and a lot of planning, I think. It'd be interesting to see how it all pans out. Thinking bigger picture, of course, because like I said, at the moment, although the ship is awesome, there's not really too much use for it at the moment, which is kind of sad. But it's a step in the right direction. Refueling is here, it works, so we've got that in the bag. Now it's just a case of, do I need one? Where will I find one? etc. So there's a lot to look forward to in terms of refueling. I still think that we need another variant somewhere. Like I said, I think a military transport variant of this ship would be awesome. Now, I do feel like the Starfarers will be useful to large orgs, even medium orgs travelling long distance throughout the various systems. Having one of these reliably at your side as you traverse the verse with your fleet, having it crewed, could be crucial to securing territory and or colonies in the future. Travelling from system to system, I think you wouldn't go wrong having a Starfarer in your fleet, or at least at a destination where you can link up and refuel your various spacecraft and utilize it that way. Again, this is something that is just a hypothesis at the moment, because until we get these larger systems, we just don't know how effective having a Starfarer will be. I imagine quite important. That's the kind of feeling I get from the Starfarers. Now, there is a smaller ship that can do the same. The Vulcan is something that smaller orgs could use, and solo players or a small group of friends would be relying on Vulcans, I would have thought. But for the larger orgs, the Starfarer is almost certainly, at the moment, the way to go. Now, we know that there is a rework coming, I believe, for the internal side of this ship. I hope they don't alter the appearance on the outside all too much, because I do still think that these ships look great. The only thing I have that's a little bit of a gripe with the standard Starfarer is that silver paint just doesn't float my boat or tickle my pickle for that particular standard variant of Starfarer. So maybe change the paint scheme on that one. That'd be my only gripe externally for the Starfarers. As a ship as a whole, I actually like the look of this. I do think it looks menacing, and it looks like a spaceship, and it belongs in the verse. I just can't help but feel it would make a better transport ship. Now, when it comes to firepower, well, this ship certainly doesn't shy away from it. Now, we know Aegis Dynamics like to blow things up. It's part of their meta. That's how they operate. That's their MO. Anything that explodes, they're heavily involved. And the Starfarer Gemini is packing some serious DPS. Now, you're not really going to be using these to go dogfighting with, and the missiles have been placed there instead of a fuel scoop, which is found on the standard civilian variant of this ship. So it's good that this particular model has firepower, maybe to fight its way out or through danger, but other than that, you're going to have to rely on your turrets to escape. I would recommend that in the future, or probably the situation will dictate, that these weapon systems are solely going to be used to either punch your way through an ambush and escape, or by some miracle you've crept up on something and can quickly obliterate it without it realizing you're there, which is extremely slim because this ship isn't exactly small in profile. It's around 101 meters in length, so quite a chunky monkey, and for this to sneak up on you, then you've done something wrong. So I strongly suspect that these weapon systems, although powerful, are predominantly for self-defense and punching through maybe a pirate blockade or something of that nature. So I would not rely on these to be dogfighting in at all. They're probably just there for your self-protection. In terms of speed, it has a combat speed of around 88 meters per second, and I think it's 899 meters per second top speed, which is, it's respectable for a ship of this size, let's put it that way. The engines look great. I still feel that the lighting on this ship and the flames towards the rear are exquisite. Look at this fueling bay here with the massive fuel tanks, the probe, the lights, the struts and the walkway really do make this ship come alive. I think this part of the ship that CIG have created here is just, honestly, it's excellent. And when you walk around for the first time on this fueling deck, you really do begin to get a sense of scale, and that immersion does kick in. But just look how glorious this area is with the lighting, that engine above it with the afterglow effects from the afterburners, the flames, if you will. So it's very, very impressive here. It really does add to the atmosphere. And I think that if you were in the deep black, you and your crew, or even a recipient of this fuel, and you've been in space by yourself, and it's been hours and hours of travelling, and you come across just some human contact with all of these lights, I think in some respects it will be a welcoming feeling docking into one of these. So I just find this area of the ship is so well detailed, extremely cool, very mechanical and unforgiving, but the lighting is where it really floats my boat here. Just exquisite stuff. This is why I don't want them to alter the exterior too much, because I think this is fantastic, this area of the ship. It really does give you that immersion and a sense of purpose, I guess is the words I would choose to describe this area. It's really, really cool. Thoroughly enjoy walking across the fuel deck on the back of the Starfarers. You will note that we have some turrets at the back for the ship's protection. I'm not sure how I feel about having live ammunition so close to fuel tanks, along with these naked flames. It is a little bit risky, I would have thought, but Quantanium is extremely volatile until it's refined, so maybe that's why it's safe to do so, I'm assuming. I still don't feel too comfortable having live ammunition and around any sort of fuel source. Only bad things can happen. Also, the protection for the rear turrets isn't brilliant. I think they need to be put on top, to be honest. Just a little bit further away from the fuel tanks. That'd probably be the only thing I would change on the outside, is maybe move those rear turrets to the top of those nacelles if possible. We know the ship's getting a rework internally, so I don't see why that would be a problem. You sort of go down some corridors and hop into those turrets. I prefer them at the back on the top of those nacelles, just away from the fuel tanks, for a little bit more peace of mind. I know there's naked flames near there, but if they have to change something without altering the entire design of the ship, the turrets I think could be swapped somewhere else. So, or maybe exhaust guards are put on the thrusters or something of that nature, so that there's no naked flame and or live ammunition anywhere near any fuel sources ever, because nothing good can come of that. Just a little thought. I could be way wrong in my calculation there. That's just a feeling I get from it. But otherwise, it looks incredible. The fuel probe looks great. The landing gear, there's nothing exuberant about them. They function, they're sturdy, and they need to be, because this ship, with all the fuel on, is obviously going to weigh quite a lot. Yeah, they serve the purpose. There's nothing special about them. It's fairly steady on the ground, and it should be, because it weighs a lot. Moving on to the bridge area of the ship then. I actually quite enjoy the bridge cockpit area of this ship. I kind of get a feeling that this is kind of the direction that the Misc Odyssey will end up taking. Very similar with the slit viewport that we have, the windscreen at the front. Very spacious in here, and I think this ship will be very similar indeed to that of the Misc Odyssey. So it's a good job. I am a fan of this cockpit. It's nice and spacious. It really does give you a sense of sci-fi in here. It doesn't suffer the problems that or at least I haven't noticed in my limited time in it, that the freelancers have. There's no sort of clipping with the MFDs. You can reach everything fine. There's plenty of room. Co-pilot, pilot, captain's seat, all of that good stuff. There's an engineering station where you can refuel craft from the bridge itself, so you don't actually need someone out on that field deck, but I highly recommend it because the immersion is amazing. So it's nicely lit in here. Bit plain Jane, but it's okay. It's not really designed to be a lovely place to sit. It's just a functional place, but it's fairly well thought out. Plenty of room. Love the lights and dials and things you can see and the switches on this ship. So I'm hoping the Odyssey turns out in similar fashion, although it will be an improved version. I have absolutely no doubt of that. Okay guys, so we've covered the externals of this ship pretty well, I feel. So now it's time to move on and take a look at the components and all of the internals that you will find stock on the Starfarer Gemini. Okay, so let's take a look at what stock components you will find on board a Starfarer Gemini if you decide to buy one in game. I think you can for around 6.6 million Alpha UEC. Point of note, The ship's components are the same size as the standard, but they have been swapped for military variants. Now, on the nose of the aircraft, on the cockpit area, we have the 4 cannons as we saw earlier. These are size 4 M6As strapped either side of the cockpit itself, punching out a substantial amount of DPS. The turrets, we have a size 5 with 2 Galderines on, and the 2 rear turrets at the back have 2 Panthers. Those are the ones located towards the rear, very close, uncomfortably close to the fuel tanks, in my opinion. But we can chop and change these however you see fit. I personally, if I owned one of these or planned to get one in game, would almost certainly slap ballistics on every weapon system found on board this ship. I want the highest DPS possible, not to go fighting with, but purely to try and escape, and anything that gives me an advantage in terms of firepower for that limited time is almost certainly going to be an advantage. So ballistics is the way I would go. Obviously, you could change that to however you see fit. The missiles at the front are Arrestor 3s, and we get 9 of those. Again, I would put the maximum... I'd actually probably go for the Thunderbolts. They do a little bit less damage, but we have extended range, again buying us time. So you can see here the lock-on range is 13,500 as opposed to 10, 8 and 10. So anything that's going to give me and my crew an advantage in terms of defense and buy me time to escape is how I would decorate this ship with weapons. The power plant, we have a size 3 super drive. I personally have not experimented long enough with this ship to recommend any components, so it's purely what we're getting with the ship as stock. It has 2 coolers, and these are size 3 Mercuries. If I was running all ballistics, I probably wouldn't need to change these all too much, depending on the shields. I mean, the shields you're almost certainly going to try and change, right, for defense at some point. We have size 3 Quantanium drive, QT drive, Quantanium drive, Quantum drive, and it's the Pontes. So big components. It is chucky. It's got some good shields, size 3 shields, so it can take a beating, and it needs to. But again, I would build this ship for self-defense and nothing more. Let's now then start beginning our little look around internally on the Starfarer, and we'll start at the cargo region at the rear of the ship. Now, as you can see, there's ample room in here. We can fit multiple vehicles, cargo. You could go cargo running. I'm not too keen on it. It's far too chunky to be doing cargo running. Plus, there are better ships suited to this role. But it is a very large area of the ship. That can't be denied. And there's also some seats there, which you could technically use this ship as a drop ship. However, I wouldn't want to go hot dropping in this ship at all, especially with fuel tanks, unless they're empty. It's extremely risky. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying it is an option with the seats to be found in this particular area of the ship. So at your own risk, be it. But this is all going to change. There is going to be a rework, but as it stands right now, I don't actually mind the cargo area. It just kind of reminds me of a larger, more in-your-face Valkyrie to some extent. So this ship internally was originally designed to be sort of like an FPS mission in itself. So it is a little bit confusing the first time that you get on board this ship, and it's one of the biggest gripes. I feel like getting lost on a Starfarer, is a common occurrence unless you own the ship and are on it frequently. There's a lot of things that don't work, and there's a lot of things that are annoying. There's ladders, there's a magnetic ladder that drives me insane. There's things that don't quite work yet, but we have to bear in mind that this is certainly one of the oldest ships in the game. I think Alpha 2.4 is when this ship released. But, you know, when you get to the rear and you get to the fuel tank area and the catwalk, it makes up for it to some extent. So this area here, I think, is, despite the risk to health with the live ammunition and flames, is awesome. Walking along this area of the ship in the void, the black of space, is a fantastic feeling. It really is. It's really, really cool. You're sort of suspended in space, surrounded by the lighting and the mechanical feel that you get from the rear of the Starfarer is a very cool feeling, and I think most people would agree with me there. Not everyone, of course, but I thoroughly enjoy walking in and through the catwalk on the rear of the ship where the fuel is. Towards the neck of the ship then we have our escape pods. This is located just behind the cockpit itself. Escape pods are going to be crucial for a ship that's highly volatile. They don't work yet. I am looking forward to the day that escape pods work across all ships. I think it's going to make for excellent gameplay, and a lot of mishaps and misfortune and funny moments are going to occur from escape pod usage. I can promise you that. I am looking forward to escape pods. Now, the bridge itself, as you can see, extremely roomy. We have the pilot, co-pilot seat, and then behind that we have the captain, who will be able to operate various functions throughout the ship while barking orders at his cronies. At the back we have the two engineering. We have like a engineering seat and then another engineering panel. The fuel probe and things of that nature can be operated from that standing position at the rear of the cabin there, which is cool. We have a generator ball, which I still feel is too small for a ship of this size. Very similar in size to that of the Reclaimer, which is also quite surprising how small these things are. And it doesn't rotate or do anything fancy like the others, so I think that might be something that would change in the future. Yeah, it's just a very confusing ship to navigate and come to terms with. Anyone that's done these Starfarer missions where you have to search for the missing crew, etc., or find particular cargo, the amount of times I get lost in a broken Starfarer is ridiculous. Then we have a fairly large kitchen area for the crew. I actually quite like this. It's very basic in its design, very, I don't want to say industrial, it's just something with all of the silver. It's a cold feeling you get in this ship, but it is a very large kitchen. It's going to be more than adequate to feed most people. Don't forget, you might even have passengers on board with those extra seats that you have in the cargo area, so having a large kitchen could prove pretty useful, I would have thought. So no complaints with the kitchen, so to speak. I think it's fairly well thought out. There's a long table for everyone to eat their meals and everything of that nature. I don't have any gripes with the kitchen. I think it's actually fairly well designed, a good aspect of the ship internally. We have the captain's quarters here as well. This is a little bit, it doesn't feel too captainy for me personally. You know, just a desk with two monitors behind him. He has his own kitchenette hot drinks machine there, which is very nice. And the ability to not eat with the crew, a little bit antisocial. You need to mingle with your crew, you got to check on them, you know, morale's a thing. You've been in space for a long time. One of your crew members just lost his hair in a fuel accident, burnt his face off, whatever. So I don't like the idea that the captain's like a bit of a recluse. He does, however, have his own ensuite, and he does have the best duvet cover in the verse, because who doesn't want spaceships and things of that nature? So he's well catered for there. I think you'd agree. He has his own washroom, toilet area. So privacy, he has it. A little bit too much with his own kitchenette. I think that's a little bit antisocial to some respect. But good to know that if you want a quick snack, there's not a problem. But yeah, so the captain's actually fairly well looked after for, and of course he does have his amazing duvet set, which is just I mean, if that's not a reason to own a Starfarer, then I don't know what is, to be honest. Probably the highlight of the ship. All jokes aside, the captain's well catered for, just looks a little bit dull in his desk area. Not something that looks particularly important. I think that needs a revamp. The crew, not so lucky. They have very little privacy, as you can see, and they don't have any cool duvets. You know, very basic Misc logo on the duvet sets there. But they do have their own storage lockers and storage bins, as you can see. But privacy, I think there's enough room in here for CIG to rework this area for the crew, give them a little bit of privacy, maybe some sliding doors or something of that nature. I do look forward to what they come up with. We have another area here for the toilets. This is the crew. Different markings for the genders, and then this random, no idea what this is. absolutely no idea. It's a ladder that takes you down to the deck. I don't know why this is here. I can see this being cut and removed from the ship because I don't see the point of this particular room. Even in an emergency, I can't fathom why that is there. Okay guys, so that was a quick look room by room, but to get a sense of scale, what we need to do now is of course take a walk around this monstrosity. As I've said, I love the exterior. I think it looks really well. It's held up well considering its age. The detail is there. I do think that a transport variant of this ship, a military transport variant, is something that they should look into, CIG. I really do. I think people would buy that, especially large orgs. But the fueling system at the back is just amazing. Despite the live ammunition and flames being a little bit of a risk, the ship looks incredible. And it's not until you walk around this beast for the first time, in and around these fuel tanks, that you really do start to get a sense of just how colossal the Starfarers are in general. So both of these ships can hold roughly 291 SCU of cargo, which is pretty... it's okay for a ship of this size. It's not really intended for cargo running, but to have onboard supplies could prove useful considering the size of this particular vessel. It does also have one size 3 radar, which is quite impressive, and 2 size 2 computers, which in the future will allow you to run multiple blades if you so choose to maybe operate the turrets autonomously. So there are some benefits to ships of this size. Point of note as well is the Gemini variant doesn't have as many external tanks for refueling as the standard version. So that's something you may want to consider. I, however, think that 6 is plenty for refueling whatever needs refueling. I think the standard version is a little bit overkill in some respects. Now let's talk about armor. We know we haven't got armor in the game yet. Now, I couldn't find any details, so let me know in the comments if you know, but I'm sure this being a military variant of the Starfarer, it might have extra armor. I would assume that is the case, but at the moment I couldn't find any details on just sort of, is it going to have more armor than the standard version? That is something to keep your eye open for in the future, but I couldn't find any details. I'm assuming, like I said, with Aegis Dynamics co-producing this particular vessel, I would have thought that armor would indeed be increased on a military variant. That was kind of the logical solution that I would interpret from any military variant of ship. Okay, so here we are. We've arrived in the cargo area of the ship, and although the cargo area isn't a horrible area of the ship, it's still quite confusing to navigate this ship for the first time, and I've been lost in it multiple times. We have a docking collar, as you can see on the floor, and 2 doors that don't open here. Don't know what they're for, but that docking collar leads directly underneath the cockpit, so you can make a quick exit from the cargo area. That's the only benefit I feel, unless you were trying to dock the ship lock-sided to a space station, maybe, or a ship-to-ship docking. I do, again, feel like that's going to change. As you can see, these doors do not work. As we progress through, we'll head back through the cargo area of the ship. And we have, like, you can see the bridge at the top. That view, though, is excellent. That needs to be kept. And as you can see, there's more than enough room to get multiple vehicles in here, if you so choose. But this is where it all gets a little bit... You can kind of see where they've had the FPS in mind with the way it's laid out. There's like, this could be almost certainly a killing zone, and you'd have players at the top shooting down into this cargo area. As we all make our way through now. So we go through standard door, out some steps. It brings us to above the bridge area. Sorry, not the bridge area, the cargo area. And then this ladder here, I hate it. So you can see we're at the cargo. Every time, if you walk too close to this, see? I hate it. Just get rid of that. Nobody needs a ladder that sucks me in like that. God, it's annoying. Then we have like a little schematic here, looking completely different internally. You can sort of see the blueprint of the internals of the ship, which is a nice touch to have, actually. And And then this is sort of another, I guess you'd be the load master here, if that's the correct term. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe dealing with the operations of the day-to-day running of the ship. Escape pods, as previously mentioned, extremely important of a ship of this nature. Not entirely sure I'm comfortable with them being... I mean, how often are the crew all going to be in the bridge at the same time? Not likely. If you're a turret gunner at the rear, well, I've got bad news for you, buddy. You've got a long way to run before the ship blows up into a million pieces. Then we enter the ship itself. We can access the refining and refueling area of the ship. So you can operate from here, which is pretty cool. No seat, though. So whoever's going to be... whoever's lazy, you shouldn't put on that station. We have a seat here. Doesn't really function or do anything at the moment. Again, I think that would be an engineering. Maybe that will become useful when we get the resource management into the game. I'm sure there'll be functions involved. They're going to have to rework this ship first, though, I would have thought. There's no point putting resource management in until all the ships are reworked to how they want them. We have the captain's seat here, overlooking the co-pilot and pilot, which is pretty good, and he has good visibility out the front so you can see what's going on, and he will be able to use certain functions from that seat at his fingertips, which is pretty useful. The pilot seat itself, we have a yoke system and a nice crisp clean MFD projected in front of us. I like this. It's very nice. It works, and you'll notice there's no clipping. And we can see, I mean, that MFD on the far left, that's no good. That needs to be brought round a little bit so that the pilot and co-pilots can actually reach these. Look, they're a little bit obscure, but overall, we don't have those... Well, we kind of have a little bit of clipping with the armour, but ideally you'd be in a flight suit, right? You're not going to be in your armour all the time. So take that with a pinch of salt. But overall... the cockpit experience isn't as bad as the freelancers. Maybe move these MFDs, but from a pilot's perspective, the MFDs are projected nicely and clearly and crisply in front of you, those digital displays. So I have absolutely zero issue with that. A few tweaks are needed is the word I would choose. Tweaks is the answer. We have the radar nicely put in front of us as well, projected in front of us. So that's the bridge cockpit area of the ship. Something I enjoy. I like that area of the ship. I'm going to have to, because I get the feeling the Odyssey will be very similar in design. Just much, much improved, I would have thought. And we carry on, and it's like, this is where we start getting into maze situations. So you go up to go down to double back, and it's just not practical. I feel the tweaks... are going to be severe on this ship. I think they will gut this completely, and it will be completely new in terms of the layout, because it needs to be. It's not very practical. And then we walk across the glorious catwalk area of the refueling part of the ship, and it is so cool in here, especially in space. We're in the hangar at the moment. It's not the same feeling, but we can operate and refuel ships from here and operate the refining area of the ship. So it's very cool. At the moment, like I said, it's a shame we don't really need it in Stanton at the moment. There's really no need, or very little, that people are running out of fuel and request a Starfarer. You don't see them all that often. That will shift, I imagine, quite significantly when we get to bigger systems. Pyro is huge. I know I mentioned Pyro a lot, but it's the only system we know is on the horizon. As more come online, then these ships will almost certainly be worth their weight in gold, I imagine. And the fact that we can dictate how much we price, I mean, there's an auto price there, but if I'm in the middle of nowhere and you've got no fuel, you pay me what I want you to pay me, or you're stuck there. So you could potentially hold people to ransom with your fuel, which is a little bit cheeky, I know, but life's cruel, get over it. So some serious money could almost certainly be made profit-wise with this ship, if you're strategic enough with it. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of shenanigans players get into with the refueling and pricing and profit and all of that good stuff. But overall, this area of the ship, despite a few problems that we've discussed, I thoroughly love this rear area of the ship. It really is excellent, and I hope they don't change it too much. It's just internally needs a tidy up. We have a lift here as well we can use to get to and from other areas of the ship, but we're not going to use it because the last time I used it, it killed me. Or I fell through the ship. So I'm not sure if it's the ship's fault or just a bug, but I'm not going to risk it because I don't want to die. I like life. Life's good. Breathing oxygen, big fan. Exhaling oxygen, carbon dioxide, huge fan. Love it. Yeah, so this is the internal. You can see it's sort of very confused. And I hate doing the search crew missions for this ship. I hate it because they're always broken up and upside down and you can't get in and it's confusing, and I think it's just unnecessarily unpractical, and we know he's going to get a rework, and when that happens I think the Starfarer will become a whole new animal. So we'll go upstairs. It's like a little maze on this ship. We have another small MFD. We have the lift. And nothing really too much in there. We'll head to this side. I'll keep going. It's like a little secret den thing here. I think this is completely... I mean, what's this? What is this? There's some access panels, so it might be important for the resource management. Although I doubt it, because this ship is going to completely change. But there's some areas that I just think, what? We do have some extra escape pods. So, prior to what I previously said, the turret gunners do have a chance of living. But again, there's another... What is this? I don't get it. I'm going to assume supplies, maybe? Spare tools, things of that nature. Maybe small workstations where we can store tools, medical supplies, things of that nature. We come back and we'll hop in this turret. So this is one of the turrets located at the rear by the fuel tanks. They are good turrets. I've got no problems with how they operate and the visibility. I don't feel great about them being so close to fuel tanks. I think even if you can't point the guns at the fuel tanks, which you can't, I still just feel like one bad ricochet is going to cause problems, you know? But I think these just need to be moved onto the top of the nacelles. Because as you can see, the turret rotation and the depression that we get isn't brilliant. The visibility and target chasing is going to be a problem. Whereas I feel like if they were on top, you'd have a lot more 360, potentially 360 degrees to lock on and shoot down targets. So the turret gunners, at least they have their own escape pods. So they're not going to die, like I previously mentioned, as quickly. But you still need to get there bloody quick. Let's be honest. Then we have the gravity ball, which, as gravity balls go, is probably the most miserable of them all. It doesn't do anything. It's completely static and just has some tiny LEDs on it. But as long as it functions, what's the problem? And this brings us to the other side, where the other nacelle. So, a little bit confusing in its design. I don't think anyone's disputing that. The question is, how are they going to rectify some of these areas of the ship? Like this area here, I don't see what it's for. I have no inclination as to why I'm in this particular room. Possibly armor, suit storage, I don't know. I honestly don't know. If you know, please let me know, because I couldn't... This is another problem with the ship. We have I'm guessing, a huge component here, which probably that big engine above the fuel that maybe you could tinker on, but there's very little in the way of telling you why and where you are and why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing. So as cool as it is, practically, look, there's just another random space here. Clearly for SCU of some kind, but for what? I have no idea. So a little bit, it just doesn't identify what's what. That's the problem with this ship, I feel. If you had purpose-built areas that were labelled so people could go, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing here. You know, those little cubby holes. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, and you can kind of see where the FPS design fits in, right? There's lots of hidey holes. There's a ladder in this particular one. Mind your head. There's some vent system. It does have that sort of stealth assassination FPS mission in mind, and not the practicality of a fully functioning refueling ship that people are going to depend on. And I hate this lift, by the way. It operates by itself and it tries to kill you all the time. Look at it. You walk near it and it tries to decapitate you. This ship, if you're not careful, will murder... Oh, no. Get off. Will almost certainly kill you if you let it. Top turret. We'll get in. No, we won't, because guess what? Please, can I get in the top turret? Please? Thank you. So, top turret with 2 size 5 Galderines. It's a size 12 turret with 2 size 5. So, obviously, ample firepower here. And we'll try and turn it on. If I can remember where the buttons... Where's the power on button? Hello? Ah, there it is. Okay. Visibility is somewhat obscured, but it's not terrible. And the gun depression, well, is not brilliant. Not brilliant at all. But it's better to have some protection than none. That's my theory. But as a cockpit goes for turrets, it's very good, very clear, easy to see. Just not particularly good with gun depression, which could be an issue. And it's got blocked visibility because of the nacelles and the spoiler at the back of the ship. Then we enter the kitchen area. As I said, this is huge. I have no issues with the kitchen. I think it's more than ample for you and your crew and any guests or people seeking refuge, because you are going to be in the middle of nowhere, I assume, because that would be the best strategy to deploy this ship in my mind. Where are people most likely to run out of fuel? That's where you want to park your Starfarer, or at least that's how I kind of imagine it, thinking off the top of my head. Through the kitchen brings us to the captain's personal quarters here, with by far the best bedding in the game. Look at it, it's amazing. He has his own viewport, so you can get some sort of situational awareness. Toilet, sink, a few towels, very spacious. No privacy with the toilet area, no door, which is bizarre. No seat either for the captain, that's just horrible. This is just all wrong. I like that he has a kitchenette, he has his bed, he has his own area, but not being able to sit at your captain's desk. That's not cool, man. Not cool. That needs to be changed immediately. So we'll go through here. This takes us through to the crew quarters. As you can see, the crew have no such privacy. Basic storage. These don't work at the moment. So there's nothing really in terms of privacy and or comfort for the crew. You're going to be next to each other all the time, all up in each other's personal space, getting mad. Yeah, I can see this being changed. I think crew will get their own quarters. That's my suspicion. Then it brings us through to the toilet area of the ship. Nothing really to talk about here because we cannot operate these at the moment. So if your crew need the toilet, unfortunately, you're going to have to go into deep space unless the captain decides to show favour to you. So a few issues with the ship. Very confusing at times. The elevator tries to kill you. The ladder, magnetic ladder, is ridiculous, extremely annoying, a little bit cumbersome to go around. There are areas of the ship that don't explain why they're there. There's random storage spaces. I like the ship. I like the kitchen. I love the fuel ramp and the catwalk. Those are all really cool, but internally I think the rework is desperately needed. So there we go, guys. That was my video on the Starfarer Gemini. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what buttons to press, and I of course will have more Star Citizen content en route to your location soon. Take care. Cheers.